Live from Venture X Studios in Frisco, Texas, it's Greg O'Connell with My Son, My Veteran. Thanks so much, Greg. Take it away.
Good afternoon, folks. Sorry we're a few minutes late here. Technical issues in studio. We have a new engineer. It's not his fault. But at any rate, I just want to say hi to Garrett. Thank you for being here and helping out today, buddy. Appreciate it. I want to remind everybody what the show's all about. We're designed to be a resource for veterans and their families. The resource begins with the DAV Texas. I talk about them constantly, not only on air, but off air. The mission for the show is to help veterans and their families live a higher quality of life with respect, dignity, one full of joy and peace. And that's the DAV Texas as well. When life seems its darkest is when these great service officers shine. Our logo for our show was created by Jordan Hankinson. I always give her a little shout out. She does incredible work. If you need work like this, go to jordanhdesigns@gmail.com, jordanhdesigns@gmail.com. Jordan, thank you again. I want to thank everybody listening out there in the DAV network and world and other places. Let's see. Garrett, I think we need that. The DAV logo. Okay, got it. Sorry, folks. At any rate, I want to thank all the listeners out there in DAV land. We've had an outpouring of support, messages regarding our mission's success. So much so that I'll be making an announcement very soon regarding the show, and I'm very excited to share that with you. I think they call that a tease. Please pass along to all of your friends where to find us and invite them on my behalf to tune us in each Friday at 12:30 right here at the JPK Crew Network. Today's topic is going to be a financial one, and this is something very near and dear to all veterans and the DAV, of course. Financial planning doesn't start, once you're 40 years old or 50 or what have you. It starts, quite frankly, when you're still active duty, and or let's just call it as early as possible. The goal today is to shine some light and help folks that are thinking about buying a house or refinancing a house. So today's topic will guide you to a more successful VA loan closing. But there's many steps that have to be taken that lead up to that. And the very first one, of course, is to have your financial house in order. This is information we're going to be also sharing out with the DAV as well, and will be available. The show is recorded, as you all know, and you can pick that up later, I think on YouTube and Facebook. Is that right, Kath? So let's talk about financial planning a little bit. There's some interesting facts I think everyone should know. All of you listening from around the world, and I know you're out there because we get your emails, and thank you for staying in touch and letting us know that you're out there. First of all, I want to point out a few things. 93% of American households do not create a budget. Most folks just sit down, write out a check for their bills, or pay it online, or debit card, what have you. But it doesn't always mean that ultimately you're going to have money left over at the end of the month. It's that old joke of, how can I be out of money? I still have plenty of checks. or in this day and age, the plastic has yet to wear out on my debit card. So how's that possible? So 93% of American households do not create a budget, and I don't find this coincidental. 7% of American households have $25,000 or more in savings and investments. So effectively, what's that saying is that the 7% who do a budget are also the 7% that have a savings and or investments, etc. Statistics, numbers always tell me everything I want to know. I think that if you take this to heart and understand how critically important budgeting is, you'll go a long way in life. I promise you that. These are all things that I have taught my veteran, my son, and my other children as they were growing up. I think it's important that we all learn this. You know, the bottom line is, unless you went to college to study finance or banking, the chances of really understanding cash management are not that great. And so it takes an effort. I tell folks all the time, if you will take, about 20, 25 minutes a week to look at your cash management. This spreadsheet that you see up on the screen right now is something that I created years ago for some clients. The businesses I was in before was corporate turnarounds, and whether it's a corporation or a consumer household, budgeting is still the same. It all starts and ends with how much money you've got coming in and how much money you have going out. So I probably 8-9 years ago, I was asked to be a guest writer or editor. I'm not quite sure what their terminology was, for the Palm Beach Letter. PalmBeachGroup.com, if you want to go there. It's a newsletter showing folks how to really start looking at savings and some things that you need to do. The wealthy have a process for what and how they do things, and so I think that those to be mimicked are those who have done it. I always have issues with folks who have filed bankruptcy and then they want to turn around and give financial advice to the rest of our world. So maybe a little oxymoronic, but I think that it's never too late to understand what cash management is all about. And I think it, more than anything, it starts with the spreadsheet that you see on the screen. And if you will do that, if you need the information, email us and let us know, and we'll get that to you. Or you can email me direct at go3357@yahoo.com, and I'll make sure that goes out to you. The thing most of us are looking to do in life, whether it's post-service, during service, or what have you, is to one day own a home. And to do that, you have to have 4 things checked off and complete it before you begin house hunting. The first thing is what we just talked about very briefly, and it needs to be talked about a lot. It needs to be contemplated a lot. It needs to be discussed in terms of a household. We spend a lot of time doing a lot of other things in our worlds. Lives are busy. I get that. We raised 4 children ourselves, my wife and I, and they're adults. There was Little League and everything else that went with that. But there's also time to sit down and have a conversation with your partner and make sure that you're both in agreement with regard to how cash is spent or household income is spent. So that's going to be number 1. It's critical. Keep that in mind. If you need additional information, as I said, email us. Budgeting and knowing what you can afford is the number 1 thing on the list. As Okay, what size house am I going to be able to afford in terms of dollars, square footage, etc.? Um, Here in Texas, thank goodness, we can afford a lot more house than maybe other places in the country. Um, but the point is that before you do anything, it's understanding, well, what can I afford? If you're renting a home now or renting an apartment now, you may be paying, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, and you can say that, well, we'll earmark that for buying a home for our mortgage, and that's a really good start, to be quite honest with you, because paying for a house, typically, especially today's interest rates, paying for a house is by far less expensive than rent. Not to mention the asset development, etc. And I won't get into that, but understand first and foremost what you can afford. So you sit down, you look. There are financial calculators out there, which we'll talk about during the show today, that will tell you how much you can afford. It'll tell you what the principal and interest would be. Taxes, here in Texas, property taxes are high, but we have no income tax. So, it's going to depend on what your taxes are in your state or whatever country you're in out there. Having said that, understanding what you can afford being number one. To be able to do that, you have to manage your cash flow. The second thing on the list to check off is your credit status. What's your credit score? We call it credit awareness. That means going online with one of the three or all three of the major scoring entities out there. We're going to get into that a little bit, whether it's Experian or TransUnion or a guest of ours will tell us the other one. I don't remember it. You can also check Credit Karma, but I want to tell everybody that Credit Karma is not always accurate, especially when you're looking for a credit score for a home. There's a deeper, what's called a deeper pool for that, and our next guest will talk about that as well. So credit worthiness, credit awareness is number two. Get pre-qualified with a lender. Shop around, find out who you're going to use. We're very pleased today to bring on the show Clear Path Lending, which we'll talk about later on. That's for veterans. They specialize in VA mortgages, and again, we'll go into that. So you can get pre-qualified with them before you go to your next step, which is find a trustworthy realtor. And so with that said, I'm going to lead right into that, keeping in mind again, how much can you afford, what's your credit score, get pre-qualified with a lender, and find a good trustworthy realtor. And so I want to go ahead and introduce our first guest. Dana was on our show on November 20th, and unfortunately, the show was running at a crazy pace, and we only had about 5 minutes with Dana. And quite frankly, I think you're all going to realize you could spend 5 hours with Dana. She's full of knowledge. That's the word I'm looking for, knowledge. No, seriously, Dana is president and CEO of D&G, the Credit Cops. Dana also is the wife of a retired Marine Corps veteran, obviously. And Dana, welcome once again. Thanks for hanging in there while we had our technical issues here this morning. So welcome.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
So Dana, those four things that I talked about leading into this, and ultimately, if the goal is to one day own a home, you're a veteran or the spouse of, you may be a mom or dad of a veteran, and they're looking to sort of navigate that path. And I sort of laid out, first and foremost, know what you can afford. Secondly is understanding your credit score, what that's all about. And then moving into a lender, a good lender who, in our case, is experienced with VA mortgages, and that's really what we're talking about. And then finally picking a good realtor. Those four things are the things we have on our list. Is there anything I missed or what?
Well, first off, I mean, having a great lender is huge. It is huge. But before you get to the lender, you are going to need your credit score, right?
Right.
I mean, heck, your credit score, obviously, if you have a top secret military clearance, you're going to need that anyway. But what people don't realize is your credit score is tied to so many other different things. I worked for a major insurance company years ago, and believe it or not, your credit score was more important for your automobile rate than your driving record. It is attached to everything. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of errors. I heard you say something before about all the errors that were on some of the other, I forgot what you said it was, but it made me think, you realize almost 90% of people have errors on their credit report.
Yeah.
And of those, 25% of that 90% is so egregious, it would stop somebody from getting a loan. Okay?
Yeah.
So about 30 years ago, a computer program was written to enforce the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Attorneys have had it for about 30 years now. I used to work for the attorney in Dallas with it 10 years ago. And that's when I found out about it after we left Experian. Forget that. After we left one of the world's largest credit bureaus.
Fear not.
Anyway, so ran into this attorney who told me about this computer program. Fast forward a few months later, and the genius that invented this said, "Hey, what do you do when your files outperform everyone's?" You were talking earlier about Credit Karma.
Right.
The data is the same. The difference is the algorithm. So what you can pull on your own, what anyone can go see on their own, that's called a consumer pull.
Okay.
It's a much softer pull. Well, it's the same pull, it's a different algorithm. So sometimes the difference between what you can pull on your own, the consumer pull, and what a mortgage lender will pull on you is anywhere from as little as 20 points, but sometimes, Greg, it can be 100-point difference.
Wow.
Huge. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And I'm going to tell you, here's what I would, FICO is the Coca-Cola in the credit score world, right?
Right.
That to changing Equifax want to be, can't.
Right.
Our computer program reads the coding in a My FICO credit report.
Okay.
FICO also has the mortgage algorithm on there. So if you're out there and you're thinking, gee, I wonder what my mortgage score is without getting a hard pull, you can go to myfico.com and get it.
Okay.
Now, I'm just going to tell you what I tell our clients. You can get their monitoring program, I believe, for $29.95 a month.
Okay.
I know there are others that are free, and well, you get exactly what you pay for.
Got it. Got it.
Say that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
let me just interject real quick,
Sure.
if I could. For those who don't know what FICO is, it's Fair Isaac. What is it? Fair Isaac Credit Organization.
Yeah, it was a mathematician and an engineer that came together with an algorithm, because it used to be, Greg, in the 50s, it depended on where you were, what side of the railroad tracks you were on, did you come from the good side, a good family or a bad family? It was all up discretionary, up to the bank.
Right.
Fair Isaac, oh gosh, of course I don't remember the name right now.
Right.
But they came together, invented this algorithm, which does not take into account your age, your race, your sex, your orientation. Doesn't take anything. It's just statistical data.
Right.
It is based
It's just
on
numbers.
Right. It is just numbers. So it is blind, basically.
Right.
Okay. So that way, it doesn't matter what tracks of the side of the tracks that you're from,
Yeah.
this algorithm is great.
So let me, if I could, I want to really ratchet down and talk about the aspect first. Know your budget. What can I afford? Second, your credit score. As you said, go to my FICO, find that out. And then the next thing is, let's say they find out what their score is, and most lenders right now are looking in the 685, 700 credit score before they will even talk to you. Talk about when you get on your credit report and you're looking at it, and you see, quite frankly, there could be fraud on there. You and I've talked about that in the past. And so what does somebody do when they get on there and they get the shock factor of, oh my gosh, what the heck happened to my credit? What's their first recourse, if you will? What should they do first?
Well, if they look at their mortgage score and they see they're at 640 and above, most loans can be written at 640 and above. Obviously, the higher your credit score is, the better it's going to be. The less money you have to put down. Every state's different. Every lender's different.
Right.
I'm not a lender, but the way I understand it, the government gets so many guidelines. So I look at that as vanilla cake.
Right.
Right. And then every lender can put what they call overlays.
Right.
Look at it frosting.
Right.
Some
and
just leave the vanilla cake. Others add, chocolate and nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And let's be clear to everyone, when you talk about what their mortgage score is, it doesn't mean you have a mortgage. It means what your mortgage score would be if someone's looking to loan you money. That's the score that makes you worthy of borrowing money to buy a home. It's that. Am I correct?
Right. Yeah. That mortgage algorithm.
Yeah.
That mortgage algorithm likes at a minimum of 3 open, active, positive trade lines in your name.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
A basic mix for that is like 2 revolving accounts and 1 installment.
Okay.
Installment would be, home, auto, student loans.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And you know what? If you go to my FICO and you find out, I'm not that bad. They actually have a credit score simulator on there. And if you don't have any collections or any paid collections, here's what you do. You can go on there, and the easy thing is for me to tell you, take everything down to 20% of whatever your limit is.
Okay.
Right? So if you have a $1,000 credit card limit, take it down to 200, never zero.
Right.
Okay. That lending algorithm likes to see how you balance.
Right. Right.
And it's not like being maxed out, you don't hardly get any points. But if you have a zero balance, it also counts as an inactive account. And inactive accounts way less than active open accounts.
Got it. That's interesting. And that's
balancing
important.
Honestly, it was because we knew how to balance a credit file. That's what separated us from the attorneys that have been using the system.
Right. And I think when you talk about being down to 20%, that's also an aspect of budgeting. Because you're looking at cash flow in, cash flow out. And if you've got 2 or 3 credit cards and you're at 50%, that's eroding the possible dollars you would have available for a mortgage. And I want people to understand that what happens is, by staying on top of it, and look, stuff happens all the time. There are emergencies in life. You and I have both talked to folks in the past with those challenges. We get it. If you had challenges in the past, it doesn't mean you have them anymore. Get back ahead of it. When your boat has a hole in it and it's sinking, it's not a great time to try to sell it. And so it's the same thing here. If your credit score has a hole in it, it's tough to go to a lender and try to sell that. They want to see a good, solid situation. And so understanding first, don't go over the 20%, or keep those numbers low. If it gets away from you for a short time, fine, get back ahead of it, and then start looking at your score again. So I just want to throw that out there. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I also want to add, and don't close it. Don't close any revolving accounts ever. You actually end up shooting yourself in the foot.
Okay.
I mean, just ask all those, the guy you were kind of referring to before.
Right.
So you can't get off the grid.
Right.
You need your credit score. Your credit score is tied is attached to so many different things.
Right.
And when you close down an account, it actually causes your credit score to drop.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, things happen.
Right.
Things happen.
Right.
So when you're ready to look at a mortgage, that's when you know what to do. You know to take those balances down to 20% or less of the limit, but never zero.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. So you're the wife of, and I know you've had other veterans in your family and household, and you and I both
Every
know.
branch.
Yeah.
Every branch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every branch of the military.
Exactly.
Except the Coast Guard.
Right.
The Coast Guard.
Right.
And Gary's a ring.
Yeah. And so what the audience we're talking to today are current active duty, and they're listening throughout the world. We know that. And those who are currently active, even we talk about the DAV and their ability to help people through transition, or TAP as it's called. And this is also a good time to talk about getting your financial affairs in order. You sort of mentioned earlier about top secret clearances with officers and some non-coms, and keeping your credit score in check for obvious reasons. But in terms of
Well, you say it's obvious reasons. Some people may not know what the obvious reason is, and it's for espionage.
Yeah, right.
Pure and simple.
And so those of you in our audience that are listening today who, again, are veterans or parents of or the spouse of, which Dana is, and you know some of the challenges that they go through, etc. Understanding VA loans is not nearly as complicated as other mortgage loans, to be sure. The process tends to be more streamlined, a little bit less lifting, etc. So from your standpoint, not only as the President CEO of D&G, the Credit Cops, and but also your status as a veteran wife, think about that in the context of the people who are listening to this, who are contemplating just what we're talking about, buying a home, where do I begin, etc. And so in your case, where they have found an issue with their credit score, and they need to help get that up. I know there's a couple of ways. First, if you don't have a credit score, there's ways to build a credit score. Go get a couple of good credit cards, pay on those for 6-9 months, start to establish something there. But again, in terms of, if you're doing this work for Gary in terms of doing the VA loan application, etc. So again, talk to the audience from the standpoint of being not necessarily the veteran, but wanting to help a veteran get into a position. So again, as the founder of D&G, the Credit Cops, and a veteran, what would you say to these veterans' families who want to help their veteran?
Well, if they're coming back from overseas, chances are, and they don't have a credit card, chances are they're going to have a very thin file, okay? That's almost as bad as not having a good credit score at all, crazy or not. So one of the easiest things to do is to become an authorized user on a family member's, mom or dad typically, with at least 20 or 30 years of perfect payment history,
Right.
Because that way you can at least borrow some of that history when you create your two credit cards. Say two. Let's just say two, okay?
Right.
So you get your two, and it's kind of a vicious circle. You don't have a credit score strong enough to get a credit card, and now how can you build a credit score if you can't get a credit card? So I'm going to tell you, the one we recommend for our clients, and we're not affiliated with them in any way. I just like the way they do their business. Okay, it's called OpenSkyCC.com. OpenSkyCC.com. What I liked about them, when the CFPB, that's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, went through the secured card world, this was the only company that made it through on the very first round, meaning they're doing everything right.
Right.
Okay. They report to all three bureaus within 30 days. They don't do a hard pull, which is important. Okay, because a hard pull actually takes points away for them. And what I liked about them is they start at $200.
Okay.
Sometimes banks, they'll start at $300 to $500. They'll do a hard pull and then they'll deny you because your credit score's not strong enough.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy in my mind.
Right.
But we recommend Open Sky a lot with our clients, and like I said, we're not affiliated with them.
Okay. And then, so that's the credit card aspect. But if they look now in the time we have remaining, if you could talk about, you look at your score and you're going through your not just your score but your credit history, and you see some things on there that don't belong. This is where you come in to play with respect to doing the heavy lifting and your software that's quote unquote the legal way of going about this. Would talk about that if you would.
So you know what, you've got our website on there, dngcredit.com, but I want to show you this. Can you see that diagram there?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So eOscar is a super data storage computer. Any creditor that wants to report to the bureaus has to upload the raw data into eOscar.
Okay.
Right? That's where Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax pull the data from to come up with a credit score. Our system reads the code in there. So we know in raw data, date, time, section, paragraph of law broken with proof. Okay? So it's not a letter writing campaign. This is what to compare us to like a credit repair company or a letter writing campaign. Honestly, Greg, that's like comparing a Ferrari to a horse and buggy. There's a prancing pony involved. Okay, but that's where the similarities end.
Right.
I'm the Ferrari in that instance.
I get it.
But you know, creditors will put code inside that computer, and that code can be wrong. And sometimes if you pay off a collection or you maybe settle an account, those creditors can also put code inside eOscar, and that code acts like an anchor, and that will artificially hold a credit score down.
Oh, okay. Got it.
We've got examples of this on our website. I mean, it's amazing. I had this one guy had been working on his credit on his own for over 2 years.
Wow.
And he was doing everything he thought, everything the internet told him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what you don't know, and they're not going to tell you, is that, well, sometimes these electronic things are in control.
Right.
And there are people putting the wrong things in there. And I don't want to say they're doing it intentionally, but a lot of times, the worse your credit score is, the higher interest rate.
Right.
You're going to.
Right.
Fair enough.
Right. And the higher your score, the lower your rate.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
So this system, we got the name the credit cops from this attorney here in Dallas who sues credit repair and debt settlement companies. And after he and I sat down with lunch, he's like, well, if you don't call yourself credit repair, what do you call yourself? I'm like, not credit repair. He's like, no, we got to think of something better. So the next day he had sent me an email, 1:30 in the morning. He said, how about the credit cops? Because your computer holds creditors to the law. And that's what we've been running with that ever since.
Got it. Love it. I love it. And how often when you're looking into someone's score, and again, ultimately your goal is to help them legally get that their score raised by getting errors, omissions, just erroneous document.
Illegal.
Yeah.
Illegal.
And right. Getting that cleaned off. What percentage, you talked about this before, and this is something I really want folks to listen to, is if you're sitting out there and you think your credit score is great, and then you wait, and go file for a mortgage, and they pull your score and say, that's the question. How many are sitting out there with a credit score that's not accurate?
80 some odd percent of the people.
That's incredible.
Yeah, like I said before, it's 80. It's a huge number, and it changes all the time.
That's
I think
incredible.
that number was like 2012.
Wow.
But it changes all the time, Greg.
Wow.
Because see, in the code, no one can see.
Right. Got it.
All the data is going to be in that raw code. This is something, writing letters simply.
Right.
You can touch it.
So if folks are listening, we'll have it up there, but if you would tell them if they want to reach out to you to help with their score. I know we'll have you on our show again in the future and talk more and more about this because it is a critical topic. But if they want to reach out to you, Dana, what's your website?
You can go to our website. It's www.dandgcredit.com.
Okay.
There's a little video on there that shows how our computer works.
Okay.
If you want me to reach out to you, we have a little form out there that you can fill, and I will be happy to call you, or you can call me. My number is 972-971-3175. We do have an 800 number as well, in case you still have the rotary dial.
Right.
Or it's 1-800-581-8381. Or you can email me, dana@thecreditcops.com.
Very good. So D&G, the website again is dngcreditcops.com.
Nope.
Okay.
No, well, you can get us at thecreditcops.com or andgcredit.com.
Got it.
Okay?
You got it. Dana, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to having you back again to talk further. This is a critical issue that we're sharing with all the veterans and active duty in terms of getting prepped to buy a home, things that they need to do, and this was critical information. We'll provide this information on the website, etc., later on.
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank all the listeners for their service. We do appreciate you so much, and hope you get home safely. Safe time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Dana, thanks a lot. Take good care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So there you go. So the first topic, again, is managing your budget, having a clear understanding of how much you can afford. The next one is understanding your credit score, how high it is. And again, that's going to affect how much you can borrow and how much you're going to pay back. The lower your score, the higher your interest, which means a higher payment. The higher your score, the lower your interest and the lower your payments. And so moving right into our next guest, we're going to bring on, I want to talk about ClearPath Lending. And ClearPath Lending is, sorry for our technical difficulties again, but we're getting there.
He's on. He just has his video off.
Okay. So I want to introduce ClearPath Lending. They are a VA mortgage provider. I'm very proud to now be married with these folks, so to speak. I find them to be a great organization, which we're going to talk about. On the phone with us is Adam Mercado. Adam is the Director of Operations for ClearPath Lending. He's had 12 years in the mortgage industry and over 19 years of management experience. In his current role, he's responsible for about 250 employees and oversees monthly funding volumes of over $500 million. What that means is those are the dollars that they're funding new mortgages on. That's a lot of money. He also completed 4 years of active duty service in the U.S. Marines, which he earned National Defense and Good Conduct medals, left on good terms, as it's called. He has been in his current role with ClearPath Lending for the last 4 years. And with that, I want to introduce Adam. Adam, are you there?
Yes. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Good morning. Sorry for being a couple minutes late here. And so, Adam, I think you've heard what we've been talking about today, and that is getting prepared for a mortgage. Number one, making sure you understand what you can afford. Number two, understanding where your credit score is right now. And there's some things I want to talk about with you today that ClearPath can help with, especially with VA loans. And so before we get too far into that, I first want to say thank you for your service to our country. I tell veterans all the time, thank you for my freedom. Without your service, I wouldn't have it. So thank you for that. Thank your family when you were deployed and going through all that you had to do. So thank you for that. It doesn't get lost on us here at the DAV Network for sure. So, but that said, you left the military. Just fill our listeners in who are tuning in today. Let them know a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you. And I have been listening to the show, and so thank you for having this radio show and getting this great information out to veterans. Especially those who are still serving.
Right.
Honestly, not something I had really as a tool when I was serving. Just basically work experience is where I gained all my knowledge when it comes to real estate and mortgage lending.
Yeah.
Fortunately, just those. It's not something they have this thing called, transition assistance.
Yes.
After you get out, or as you're getting out.
Right.
But it doesn't really cover this much into depth in the financial world. So really great show today.
Yeah, and I'll just interject real quick, if I may, Adam. And what Adam's talking about is TAP. It's a transition assistance program. If you're 6 months from leaving service, regardless of what service you're in, understand that you're going to go through transition assistance. Get a hold of the DAV in the state you live in. Speak with them. They will likely have available to you a transition service officer, and he or she is a veteran themselves. Every TSO that you're ever going to talk to, or national service officer, are veterans, and these are people who have gone through what these folks are about to go through. So I urge everyone to reach out to their DAV in their area and get a TSO. And that's an important part of this whole transition aspect is there's so much that gets lost in the whole process, I will say. And I will say, I've heard this a number of times, officers are typically more buttoned up than, others enlisted. And so it's important as you're going through your transition, pay attention to what's going on. And so you make a great point, and I interrupted you, Adam, and I want to say thanks again and go right back where you were, or go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. And I think it was a great interjection because, TAP program is I learned about last minute, I think, so having knowledge about it beforehand, I think is a huge point for the veterans that are listening, as well as the mention of the DAV.
Right.
It wasn't until after I got out of the service, and I think I saw it somewhere, on a website or something about the DAV, and the fact that the work that the DAV is doing, assisting veterans, the fact that it doesn't cost anything, it's huge. Right. And so, right. That's a great point for both TAP and for the DAV, mentioned here.
Yeah, exactly.
So as I was saying, the work that I did, I actually did a year prior to enlisting in the mortgage industry, and then as soon as I got out, basically transitioned back into it.
Okay.
And the kind of the administrative role to start off with, and then kind of took off from there. Definitely been in a lot of different parts. Was in mortgage industry, a number of years ago at this point.
Right.
My first job back in '97.
Right.
Before I was actually in the Marines, and then afterwards.
Right.
And so it's seen a lot of different sides of the industry, parts that dealt with just other mortgage lending companies, and then now and for some time dealing directly with consumers, and specifically is that right now with ClearPath Lending, we're a niche lender. We basically all we do is government lending, more specifically VA loans.
Great.
And it was part of our biggest kind of excitement to be a part of this program, is because one is to get the word out there and really make sure that veterans understand all the benefits that they have access to,
right,
by serving, and the fact that they have special loans that they're basically not available for
right,
a lot of people that didn't serve.
Right.
For example, if you're doing a conventional loan, you're going to maybe be able to get something like with a 640 FICO, and as veterans are working on their credit and building up, like the previous guest mentioned, that they have access to loans even at lower FICO scores. Before the pandemic has impact on financial market, it has impact on rates. But before the pandemic, we were doing, borrowers that had 400 FICO.
Oh, wow.
460 to be able to do a loan for.
Wow.
Now things have tightened up a little bit, and things are a little bit more conservative as far as what the risk and the FICOs that lenders are allowing. But we can still go down to 580. So has a 580 FICO.
Okay.
We can still help them.
Something you and I talked about in one of our first conversations was no score. There are those out there, youngsters, et cetera, that just simply don't have a score. We touched on that with Dana with regard to how to go out and start building a credit score. I know COVID has affected so many areas. With regard to folks that just simply don't have a score, what would you say to them?
Well, we're this pre-COVID, pre-pandemic.
Right.
I would say, come on in. We'll submit you as a no-score loan.
Right.
Now, post-pandemic, they do need to get some sort of credit going.
Okay.
580 is a fairly attainable bar.
Sure.
Like I mentioned, if you're a civilian, you have to have at least 640 to get a conventional type loan.
Right.
And even then, it would be really challenging.
Yeah.
Here, with ClearPath Lending and the fact that, as I mentioned, what kind of niche we've really kind of been able to offer some exciting things. And to me, exciting, being able to extend credit to a borrower, a veteran borrower who has a 580 FICO is really exciting when it comes to the current times. And so I would say, get yourself established. And, the no-score program will come back.
Sure.
It's just as things have to, continue to solidify. And then eventually we'll see those programs return.
Yeah. And I think if we're just looking at a sort of a calendar here for a moment, if I'm starting my 6-month transition assistance program and I start working on my credit score now, and then I get out and then continue to work on it now as a veteran, I'm thinking like 9 to 12 months, they should have something on the radar screen, so to speak. Am I right about that?
Absolutely, yes. That should be about the time frame you're looking for, and definitely worth checking out. And again, talking about the benefits that we want veterans to realize they have access to is that when they go to purchase a house, they can do 100% financing, which is basically just not eligible for people that didn't serve. So that really helps. Is like you mentioned, they're putting themselves out there financially. They're extending credit to build up their credit score. They're getting they're getting new employment. Right. And the fact is that if they work on all of that, then they can basically finance everything within the purchase. They don't have to really bring in much at all.
That's
the actual transaction.
That's a great point. Effectively, what you're saying is zero down when we're talking about being a qualified individual for a VA loan. Zero down, I think you and I were talking about, it's that because they consider your service as your down payment. Am I right about that?
Yeah, basically, being a veteran is that you have these programs that were authorized under the GI Bill that basically are allowed to nobody else.
Right.
So they can do the zero down to 100% and basically say, if you want zero down, of course, I only want to borrow $200,000. I've saved up some money.
Right.
I'm going to put $20,000 towards the purchase. You're more than welcome to.
Right.
But if you basically, especially, in that scenario that we talked about where you're taking money and you're establishing it, using it to establish your credit score.
Got it.
And you want to take advantage of that benefit, you can.
Got it.
And have zero down. And then later on, when you want to pull equity from the home, veteran loans always have, or VA loans always have the ability to access more of your equity beyond what a person, would be able to do in a conventional or FHA loan.
Right, right. And, going to the website, which is www.clearpathforveterans.com. I was perusing that a couple of times this week and went to, if you will, the sort of application aspect or process and looked at what it takes to actually apply. Didn't look like a lot of heavy lifting. Am I seeing that properly?
Well, when it comes to a purchase loan or a cash out full documentation loan, that's going to be your standard stuff, which is income documentation and appraisal that will need to be done. But to get started off, one, you'll never need much from us. And the fact is that when you have a veteran who has a loan, a VA loan already, then that's where it really can be a nice program that's not available to your standard person.
Gotcha.
And that's the Streamline loan, or it's called the VA IRL.
Okay.
And the Streamline loan has no asset, no appraisal, no income documentation required.
Wow.
So you literally have about 4 or 5 things that we're going to request from you. I mean, your mortgage statement, driver's license, very kind of easy stuff.
Right.
And we'll be able to get you a rate and that we'll basically see a lot of benefit, a lot of savings. A lot of times, any cost of loan is achieved in like the first few years of savings.
Wow, that's incredible. And I want to, as you're talking about that, and again we go to the transition assistance program or period as well. The DAV TSO can help you get all of your paperwork in line, in order. That's going to be your military records, your medical records. Anything that you need to get filed with the VA when you leave, you can get that done in advance. Then, along with that, starting to manage your finances better and understanding those so that if you want to buy a house in a year or what have you, you can get there. You may be current active duty and already own a home, and you're going to, move from Washington back to beautiful Texas, of course, and buy a home. And here's a perfect situation that Adam is talking about with respect to, if you already have a VA loan, reach out to ClearPath Lending for Veterans and let them help you through this process. It sounds like a pretty, to use the term, streamlined effort. And so I think that what I want those who have never applied for a loan, Adam, who've never been through that process. I remember the first mortgage that my wife and I applied for about 42 years ago. And people are laughing here. It was scary. It was scary. And I'll be honest with you, back in those days, the prime rate, you're too young to remember this, but was up around 18%. And so we did what was called what was it? Effectively a lease to own. Land contract. Right. That's what it was, a land contract. Look that up, all you young realtors. And that's how we bought our first home when rates were at 18 and we paid, 10, which was still too damn high. But our mortgage was going to be $320 a month. And my wife and I just looked at each other like, oh my God, are we crazy here? Then it wasn't long after that, maybe 6 years later, that our new car payment was $2 higher than our house payment. So it was nothing. My point I'm trying to make here is those who've never applied for a loan, who've never gone through the process, who don't own a home, it's a scary consideration. And what I like about ClearPath Lending for Veterans is how you guys make that easier. You really handhold. The fact that you're a veteran means everything, of course. You know what they're going through, what they've been through, et cetera. And so talk about that a little bit in the time that we have left. Talk to those who've never applied for a loan, who have that VA benefit available to them. They don't know about it, but inspire them to reach out and call ClearPath Lending for Veterans, if you would, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really nice, because as I mentioned, my first job being in the industry back in '97, and now 2020 being at ClearPath now for over 4 years, is when you're a niche lender, right?
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
basically you focus on one particular type of phone. What's really awesome is that there's nothing really that can come across our desk that we
Mm-hmm.
have not seen before.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to an LES, right, leaving
Mm-hmm.
earnings statement,
Mm-hmm.
with something that we see all the time, and when that's the problem sometimes when you go to a local bank, a local credit union, is that it might be the one VA loan they do that month, or
Right.
they might only do
Right.
10 or so a year, and for us, it's just all we do.
Mm-hmm.
We do conventional and FHA loans that come to us,
Mm-hmm.
but the majority, 99% of what we do is VA loans.
Okay.
And so really, there's nothing that a borrower can bring on a phone call. There's nothing that we can see in documentation that at this point we haven't already seen and know how to navigate. So that's what it's nice when you go with an expert in VA, is that you're using our experience and our diligence
Mm-hmm.
with a product that we're so familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't have to be so nervous. You don't have to worry about, am I going to get, is this process going to be done right? Is it going to be done quick?
Mm-hmm.
It's just for us, because it's so, like the back of our hand. Not
Right.
only do we do it well, we also do it very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And I think that
I
was
sorry, I was going to piggyback one thing off that, and
yeah, go on.
and of course, for those veterans who are already lucky enough to have purchased a home,
Right.
The fact that we have the rural program,
Mm-hmm.
Which is going to be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you did an amazing job of getting and being a homeowner, and it's always a little bit more difficult when it comes to getting an appraisal and getting all the income documentation, especially when you're doing it for the first time.
Right.
But from that point on, you've got it easy.
Yeah.
You have a streamlined loan. We don't need to see
Right.
stuff. We don't need to have anyone check out your house for value. We can just get you a lower interest rate.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's just a really nice to be able to have that streamlined option. To be able to do
Absolutely.
it for lower FICO, to be able to do it for all types of housing types, including manufactured homes.
Absolutely. And I think that where I was going when I was going to interrupt you was that, before we, folks who've been listening for the first 3 or 4 shows here know that before we contemplate a sponsor, we do a pretty decent vetting process to look at and understand who they are, what they do. And one of the things that I discovered right up front, and it's the number one thing for me, is the customer care and the customer service aspect of ClearPath Lending for Veterans. And I actually called in a couple of times, tried to disguise my voice. I had my son call in at one point and just have a conversation. And I got to tell you, that's exactly what we found was, I again, getting back to the notion that it's scary. And yet you're on the phone with people who've done this, who've been there. You're not their first effort in this process. And so, the fact that you're a veteran, and I know there are other veterans within the organization, it's like the DAV. Everybody there is a veteran. They care about our veterans. Not that we don't care about everybody. We just have a very, very special place in our hearts for our veterans. And I liked that about ClearPath Lending was your sort of kid glove approach. My son took it up as if he was applying for the first time, and Brian is quite frankly, the reason this show exists. Having gone through all of the challenges he went through, the last thing he wants to do is then have a huge effort applying for a mortgage loan, for goodness sake. And so that was something that I don't want to sound like a commercial here, but I was really impressed by that. Adam, and I know as Director of Operations, that's clearly within your bailiwick and of your control. And so I would say first, you've done a good job there, but now look to the future of these people who are listening and contemplating a loan. Ease their mind. What can they expect when they reach out to ClearPath Lending for Veterans?
Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head, is that for us, I think for every call, of course, for every customer, appreciates ClearPath money, but we do just really try to take care of our veteran borrowers. I think that because the majority of our business is the VA loans, is that we really kind of try to pay that forward and make sure that a borrower feels appreciation from ClearPath lending.
Right.
And when it comes to the IRRRL process, just the kind of lending, right? Because we're dealing with borrowers that are transitioning from service, and so we'll come across a situation where they're buying their first home,
Mm-hmm.
or we're dealing with a borrower who who's now been a homeowner for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a scenario that we're just very used to at this point, where this is going to be their first mortgage transaction outside of purchase.
Yeah.
And so there's apprehension, and so we just, it's because we've done through it so many times, because we know what, from the borrower's experience, how that can be.
Right.
We do kind of take, like you said, the kind of the glove approach, the manicure approach, where we really kind of let the veteran know what's going to happen.
I like that.
And then after that, we come through.
Okay.
We say what we mean. We basically, I think on average, of course, on the one thing about the IRRRL loan is that you have to make a certain amount of payments. But, and that was probably the only thing that would slow us down.
Okay.
Once we have a fully seasoned loan where the payments have been made, the required payments have been made, we are able to usually, at this point, turn around the loan within about 14 to 19 days.
Oh, goodness me.
From application to funding.
And on the IRRRL, am I correct? It's about, 6 or 9 months worth of payments before they can apply? Am I right? Correct me.
To be technical, it's 210 days from the first contractual payment date.
Okay.
What that equals basically is 7 payments.
Okay, very good. So 7 months. Once you've had your initial loan for 7 months, go in and apply for the IRRRL, streamline, lower your credits or lower your interest rate, etc. By then, 7 months in, your credit score has jumped because you've made 7 on-time payments, etc. And I want to tell everyone that's listening a couple of things. Number one, if you ever have an issue with any of our sponsors, please reach out to us here at the DAV Network and at My Son, My Veteran, our show. We have great sponsors that I'm very proud of, but they're all human, and we all can make mistakes or make a mistake, and the key is own it, fix it, and go forward. And so I want to tell everyone that, but I also want to invite anyone listening who is contemplating a VA mortgage. I couldn't urge you enough to reach out to ClearPath Lending for Veterans. Go there. If you have any issues or what, give us a call. But more importantly, reach out to Adam. I promise you, he's everything that you've heard him to be on the phone today and more. He's focused, he's precise, he's honest, that's key. And so I would say to anyone listening, if you're contemplating a loan, reach out to Adam and the good folks at ClearPath Lending for Veterans. I will say, Adam, as you were talking, our engineer who is retired Marine, went through SF selection. As you were talking about the IRRRL, his eyebrows went up. And our next guest is someone I think the world of, which I'll introduce in a moment. But she's a realtor, and she too, as we were talking about it, her head was nodding in recognition as well. So, Adam, you and I are going to be regulars. I so appreciate you being here today. I love what you guys do. I can't speak high enough of you, except to say that in the future I will, because I'll know more of you. And so thank you so much, my friend, for your time today. Say hi to all the folks back in California and your team there from us at the DAV Network and My Son, My Veteran. I greatly appreciate the work that they do, and have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show.
You bet. Take good care. So there you go. First, we talked about budgeting, understanding what you can afford. Second, we talked about your credit score. Where is it? if it's not where it needs to be, what to do to fix that, some therapy, if you will. You just heard it from the Director of Operations from Clear Path Lending for Veterans. Quite frankly, how easy the process is. I went through it myself just to see. Don't be afraid of this stuff. If you're a veteran, you earned this benefit. Don't be like my father-in-law. God love him. He's 93 years old and got sick in the last couple of months, and we've had to make some changes. And so we found out that while he was in Korea and I think got out of the military in about 54, he had never applied for any VA benefits. They didn't even know existed, quite frankly. So when I did some research, eventually that research led me to the National Archives in St. Louis, and that's where his folders are and his files are. And now with COVID, it would take about 6 to 7 months to go find those files. And so what I'm getting at here is you've earned so many benefits. You fought for us. You gave us our freedom. You continue to give us our freedom. And we want to be a resource for you. We want to educate you, your family, all of those out there. The DAV, my vocabulary is not extensive enough to tell you what great work those folks do. We're going to have some of them on the show here, I think in the next week or so. But all of you listening, don't let this whole mortgage thing be fearful. If you're currently paying a rate probably higher than 3%, I would urge you to reach out to Clear Path Lending for your VA loan, refi, etc. So with that, I want to introduce someone special to me. Her name is Savannah Dunn. Savannah is a realtor, but more importantly, guess what? Yep, you said it. She's a veteran. We surround ourselves by the best here, folks. And so I want to introduce and say hello to Savannah Dunn. Savannah, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome.
I'm so glad to be here as well.
So I have to be honest with you. There are people who said that as I've gotten older, my hair's gotten grayer, etc., and maybe I need a younger, fresher look. I thought that meant go color my hair and have a facial. Well, it didn't. They were kind of hinting that we needed, someone attractive. So I said, kind of like the Beauty and the Beast. They laughed, and someone said, yeah, well, we'll leave it up to the listeners to decide which one's which. And so I'm kidding, Savannah. I'm thrilled to have you on the show today. I want to talk about the topic we've talked about today. Thank you for being here. And I also want to say that you're going to see Savannah. She and I spoke this week. You're going to see her more often coming in to talk, not just about her profession, which is being a realtor, but also what it's like to be a veteran, a mom, a veteran,
a spouse,
and a spouse, and we're going to talk about that. So welcome. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I'm
Welcome.
so excited to be here. So, gosh, where do I even start? How far back do you want to go?
So I won't go to kindergarten.
Okay, let's not go that far.
Even though that's only, 15 years or so?
Just about.
Yeah, right. And so talk about your service first. And then, and I want to say that Savannah will talk about her husband Stefan, who is also a veteran, and she'll talk a little bit about that. But talk about what it was like in service, and then you transitioned out.
Yes.
You went through that whole process. You know what it's like to go through the process of getting VA benefits, etc. And then just we'll kind of go from there.
So I think I was like a lot of teenagers where maybe I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Right.
And my mother actually suggested going into the military. Thought she was crazy, but I really wanted to go to school. And for us, that was our best option for going to school was going in the military. So I know a lot of people will do that.
Right.
So I'm originally from the Seattle area
Okay.
and enlisted up there. And I met Texas
Yeah, there you go.
in the summer of.
Congratulations.
In the summer, I didn't even know it could get that hot. So my basic training started in August.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, it was very warm.
Where was your basic?
In San Antonio.
Oh, hello.
So it was humid.
In August?
In
Oh, my
August. You think
God.
in Washington State,
Oh, my
not
heavens.
DC State,
Yeah,
it's
right.
an average of probably 50 degrees
Right.
all year round.
Oh, my God.
So that was fun.
Yeah, right.
I went in as a linguist.
Okay.
So
What does that mean?
I was in intelligence.
Okay.
I had to take an additional test to get
Okay.
into linguist. So it's
Okay.
called the D Lab,
Okay.
which is literally a made up language.
Okay.
And you interpret. And then they
Oh.
tell you how your aptitude for learning more languages.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, really
Okay.
interesting concept. You feel like you fail, and then when you walk out, they tell you, here's your language.
Oh, really? Wow. It's
really neat.
So can I ask which language?
So I
they
was,
assigned you to?
I got Spanish,
Okay.
which means my aptitude's not very high. But that's okay because they send us to the Defense Language Institute in California,
Okay.
and they have a 70% attrition rate.
Oh, wow.
And I passed, so I'm
Wow.
happy.
Congrats.
Yeah. My husband, when I met him in California, he actually got Farsi for his
Oh,
language. So
yeah.
he's much smarter than I am. He ended up getting transitioned into a different field,
Right.
though, because
I
he was
understand.
one of the 70%.
One of those.
But I mean, you have to learn
Yeah.
Farsi in 9 months.
Yeah, I think my son had a few of those guys
Yeah.
in with them. When
And
they
there's
were
some
Asian.
there's some people now they put when we were in Spanish we were partnered with the Army and they were guys from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So when you put someone who's never learned Spanish before from Alabama next to a kid who's grown up in Puerto Rico, guess who's gonna move
right.
forward?
I hear you. So you were in the Air Force, right?
Yes,
Okay.
went into the Air Force.
Okay.
My mother's good friend, who we're still good friends with, her husband was a full board colonel.
Oh, wow.
And so
okay.
he was the one that put the bird in her ear
Gotcha.
and showed me McCord Air Force Base, which is a beautiful Air Force base.
Okay.
I would never see McCord
Okay.
afterwards.
That's true.
You never would see it. I ended up getting stationed in San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I spent time in San Angelo doing training
Okay.
and then California as well.
Okay.
So that was really nice.
And did you have deployments?
I did not have deployments.
Okay.
My husband was the one that did the deployments.
Right.
So when you're a linguist, you go through many years of training before
Mm.
you even see the job.
Okay.
In between those times is when I met him.
Okay.
So we actually had gotten married
Okay.
5 months after meeting each other.
All right. I can understand that. I get that.
So
He's a smart guy.
he's smart.
He's a very smart,
Smart guy. We actually spent a majority of our marriage first year in different states.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Which a lot of
Yeah.
people do.
Yeah.
So
That's tough.
it was tough. It was just when you're 20, 21,
Yeah.
you don't really see far.
Yeah.
You see pretty short distance.
Yeah,
You think
and-
you know everything.
And for those of you, again, young folks
Yes.
listening, pay attention here. There's a lot of messages being sent out to everyone, and, Savannah's doing that as well. It's tough. We know it's tough. Just don't give up. So go on.
Yes. So eventually I ended up separating, and that process was
Separating from the military.
separating from the
not
military.
Stefan.
Yeah, not Stefan, not
Right,
Stefan.
right.
But that process was such a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I don't really remember much of that process
Yeah,
because
most
it
don't.
was right over your head,
Mhm.
and you have so many resources,
Mhm.
and you don't even know where to start.
Mhm.
Especially if you're younger when you're separating. Some people just do their 4 years or their 6 years and get out.
Mhm.
You went in at 18, 19. I mean, you're still pretty young when you
Yeah.
get out.
22, 23 years old. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
You usually know a little bit more than the average 22-year-old at that point because
Mhm.
you've seen a lot more.
Sure.
But you also have a lot of stuff taken care of for you
Mhm.
that when you get into the military or into the civilian world,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know what's going on anymore.
Right.
So it's just health insurance,
Yeah.
house payments,
Yeah. Contemplating a mortgage.
mortgage,
Yeah.
any of those things.
Yeah.
So I remember that being just so overwhelming
Yep.
and terrifying.
Yep.
Trying to get my first job outside of the military.
Yeah.
I had to go on monster.com,
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
put in a resume.
Right.
I was very fortunate when I got hired.
Yeah.
Very fortunate. So, McIntyre Law, Noble McIntyre, he's in Oklahoma City. So my
Okay.
husband was stationed in Oklahoma City at the time.
Okay.
So I separated, moved up to Oklahoma City.
Right.
And Mr. McIntyre, he's still a lawyer there now, personal
Wow.
injury lawyer. He's on his 10th year.
He never should have let you go.
He
His
did.
loss
We
is our
called it a
gain.
divorce.
Oh, yeah?
We called it a divorce.
right.
I still talk to him to this day.
Good.
He is a great man. He
Yeah.
introduced me into the world of business
Okay.
for the first time. He was probably my first mentor, and I didn't know it at the time
Got it.
because I was 20.
Sure.
But he hired me. He brought me in.
Mm-hmm.
I did my interview, and they're looking for a receptionist. But all I heard was law firm, and panicked, going, I never paid attention to law classes.
Right,
I don't
right.
want to be a lawyer.
Right.
So we just want you to answer the phone.
Yeah. You don't have to interpret the Constitution
Yes.
or law. Right.
Yes. So he said, look, you're young. You obviously can follow directions because you just came out of the military.
Right.
You should hopefully be on time because
Right.
they were struggling finding people to show up on time.
My God.
And he said, and you can speak Spanish.
Yeah.
And that's what they needed. So
Wonderful.
I remember that he goes, how much did they pay you in the military? And I told him. And he goes, great. He probably added a couple
Yeah.
more digits
Right.
to it and
Right.
said, can you start tomorrow? And it changed my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think what I want folks to hear is that our show is a resource. We're here to help you. I've talked a little bit about the challenges my son went through, post-military, wounded in action, Purple Heart recipient, and many other medals. He did stuff that he still can't talk about, and quite frankly, some things he really can't talk about. He was talking to me the other day about being in Karma and Fallujah, and it was during the surge. And I've told folks before this that his unit had more firefights than any unit since World War II. And some of the things that he was required to do, not necessarily by the military, but because it had to be done, a lot of us sleep better because of, but a lot of us also would never contemplate it. His younger brother was talking to him recently and saying that Brian was always his hero, and that he said, Brian, there's things you did that, I just, no way I could do it. And so all of our service members, regardless of what they did, whether they were a linguist or 31 Bravo or 11 Bravo, whatever, 5811, they served us all well and earned many, many benefits. But the reason I would like to have Savannah come in from time to time is, first, she's closer to the age group than I am. The daddy part of this, I guess. But she's really in tune with, as you just heard, some of the challenges when you're in the service and you're away, some of the challenges when you're in the service, and, just living together. He's gone constantly, but, there's just so many challenges. And again, to be a resource means we're here to talk to you about a lot of different things. And so I wanted Savannah to introduce herself a little bit and let you know that she's speaking your language. She's been there. I love and adore you for that. You know that. And then I want to, with the time we've got left, I want to talk briefly, get back to our topic with respect to transitioning out, and or if you're a veteran, the things that you need to do if you're not doing. First is get a handle on your cash management, understand that. When did you discover that part?
I discovered that when I met my husband and saw how he spent his entire paycheck on me one week.
Hello.
And I thought, what?
Wow.
How would you do that? So I actually started managing his finances
There you
before
go.
we even got married. We got serious quick. But for me, I still didn't quite grasp the concept of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us go, this is how much we have, this is how much we need to pay in bills, and the rest of it is fun money.
Right.
They say enlisted folks are the poorest rich people in the world.
Yeah.
They got the nicest cars.
Exactly.
They got base housing. You can tell an airman, at least I know airmen. I was around airmen. You could tell an
Right.
airman driving down the street, and it was so prevalent.
Right, right.
And because you're kids,
Yeah.
and you finally get a steady paycheck,
Yeah.
and what do you? My
You
husband
didn't have to ask your mom and dad.
no, you just
Yeah.
did whatever you wanted.
Right.
So we struggled with that concept for a very long time, actually. Credit cards were the death of us.
Oh, yeah, as
the
in
death.
most people.
Yes.
Yep.
And finally, once we both had two good incomes, that was what really kind of turned the tables for us. And then we
Right.
had children. And that will either make or break you.
That really seriously you up in a hurry.
It does. Yeah. And then
yeah.
you want to do things with your children. So you got to have money for that. So
Yeah.
that's why I really am passionate about the real estate side, because there's a whole nother side of real estate with investments that can really help veterans.
Exactly. And we'll talk more and more
Yes.
about that in days and months ahead. And I think what I'd like you to talk about now as a realtor, doesn't matter their age, active duty, veteran, they've never had a mortgage.
Right.
And we talked about the things they need to do. Get a handle on your budget, know what you can afford.
Yes.
Check out your credit score and understand it. And if it's low or no, start working on it.
Right, because you're going to pay the interest, and it's
You
not
are,
worth it.
And it's a lot of money. And then thirdly is a good VA mortgage lender.
Yes.
There's a lot of organizations out there, banks, etc., and I mean banks, who will talk the talk about VA mortgages, but when it comes to walking it, they really drop the ball, quite frankly.
Can I tell you what happened to me?
Chime in.
Oh my goodness gracious! We used someone we thought we knew, we trusted, and they never explained to us. I just found this out in the last 2 years of being a realtor, that if you bring more cash, because it's a 0%, it's 100% financing. You can put $0 down. You're going to have closing costs, but you don't have to put any money down. Well, if you have a disabled status, you have what's called a funding fee. A funding fee can cost just about as much as 3%.
Oh goodness.
Yes, it gets rolled into the loan, so us veterans are like, woohoo, we don't have to pay for it; it just gets rolled in.
Nothing out of pocket.
Just add that debt on in, right? But they don't tell you if you bring 5% or 10% down, you can actually cut that funding fee in half.
Oh, okay.
So instead of having 3% debt rolled into your loan, you could have 5% of equity, or less than, because you're taking the difference, but like 4.5% of debt.
Got it.
I'm not the lender, but you can have equity in your house versus more debt in your house. Our friend never told us that. We had the cash, but we wanted to hold on to it. You wanted to be liquid.
Now, was there a benefit to your friend?
I'm not the lender, but I'm assuming there should have been some, because why wouldn't they tell us?
Exactly. And I think that's where I'm coming from here is you need people you trust.
Yes. We did multiple homes with that person until we switched and found out. And by that point, my husband had his disability rating. So once you get disability rating, you don't pay a funding fee anymore.
Right.
So we actually got one refunded to us, which was pretty cool.
Well, that's good.
They did send us a check.
That's good. Somebody was honorable.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, those of you out there who are again contemplating mortgages, etc., it does matter who writes that loan ultimately for you.
Yes.
And
they need to know what questions to ask you.
Well said.
They need to know.
Yeah.
And honestly, to any veteran, the VA loan looks like a scam. It really does. You'd think most veterans who'd get out of the service and transition into the wild, wild west of the civilian world, everyone's targeting them. They're targeting from all their programs or this, or that. You don't know who to trust.
Right.
And when you look at the VA loan on paper, it just sends off red flag after red flag, because it's too good to be true. 100% financing, low payment.
Right. Where's the fine print I'm missing? Right? Yeah.
So it's a lot. I've seen veterans who have not even used the VA loan because they thought it was a scam.
Really?
And it's honestly, I've used it 5 times.
Wow.
It is the best, and you can use it again and again.
Oh, wow.
Your situation changes, but as long as you repay it, you can reestablish your benefit.
Right.
And so many people think once they have one, they can't ever use it again.
That's the first time I've heard that, Savannah.
Yes.
That they actually didn't do it because it was too good to be true.
It's too good to be true.
Well, and we've all grown up with if it's too good to be true, then
it shouldn't be.
Not.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But in this case,
it's the best product.
Before you go to a mortgage lender or a realtor or anyone else, you can go online and discover for yourself what that benefit is that you've already earned, so that when you then do start talking to a mortgage lender, in fact, it's not too good to be true because you've read it yourself that this is what I've earned.
Right.
And that's key here.
Well, and something about getting a Texas lender, Texas has its own veteran programs for land and other things like that.
Right.
So it's so important to get connected with someone who really knows what they're doing.
And also, I happen to know if you're a Texas veteran and a Purple Heart recipient, there's even more benefits.
Right.
Yeah. And so you've earned it. Do it. And Savannah will be coming back, as I said. We're going to talk more and more about her service life, her veteran life, and now her professional life as a realtor, so that there are times if you want to write in and ask questions, you can do that, and we'll ask Savannah on the air and get some more input from the standpoint of what a realtor goes through, what a realtor does for you. And it's just as easy to find a bad realtor as it is a bad bank or bad mortgage lender.
It is true.
Yeah, and it's not just because, as you said before, they're friends or they're, it's my Aunt Sophie or Uncle Ben or, what cousin or my best friends, whatever. In the end, this is your money.
It is. And you should get someone who works for you.
There you go. That's exactly the point. And so before we sign off, tell everybody what realty you work for, a little bit about that.
Yes. So I work for Keller Williams.
Okay.
That's exactly who I signed up with and who I'll probably stay with forever.
Okay.
They just give so much opportunity for growth,
Okay.
which is what I'm really, that's a big part of what I do. I've been in real estate since 2017.
Okay.
Prior to that, I was actually marketing for real estate for a good 5 years while we were relocating around the different states.
Yeah.
All those stay-at-home moms,
Yeah.
I've played that life too, being a spouse, and that's a whole nother job on its own. So someone introduced me, a dear friend, Miss Susan, introduced me into real estate and kind of got my head on straight, and this has been the best time of my life. I've done a lot of things to get to this point, and they've all really come together to give me the what I need to do for my clients.
And I think that, I know Susan Kubik is who we're talking about, and it reminds me I should probably get her on here.
You probably should.
Because, not because she's a dear friend, but what I like about Susan, I'm a father of a daughter, and I think the world of her. Listen, I was the type of dad who told my daughter, with the exception, and don't get mad at me, all of you football people in Texas, but, there's no NFL for women, and so there's just certain things women can do that we can't, and vice versa. But that said, what I like about Susan is she's a strong woman, and I will say she's Dana, the founder of her own company, is a strong woman. Our friend here, Savannah, is a strong woman. As I said in our first show, this show could be called My Daughter, My Veteran, My Wife, My Veteran, My Husband, My Veteran. It's about anybody who's a veteran. It just happens to be about the journey my son took. And just FYI, Savannah, that silhouette is my son.
Love it. And
that the Purple Heart, you know what that is, and the gold star behind it, you know what that represents as well. So, I think strong women are incredible people. Strong men are incredible people, but I also understand the challenges for women, having been in corporate life for many, many years in a big corporation. I understand it, and I embrace strength in all aspects of our life. And so Susan is one. She's a good mentor for women.
Yes.
Susan, I'm not going to give her age away, but she doesn't look anywhere close to her age. So Susan, if you're listening, you owe me a bourbon and water or something. But that said, I want you veteran women that are out there, veteran spouses who are women, active duty women, active duty spouses that are women, listen to the show. We have a lot to offer you in terms of resource and information. You guys are going to love Savannah in the future. We're going to talk more and more about so many topics. I want to thank you, my dear friend Savannah, for joining us. If you're in the area and you need a home and you're shopping, reach out to Keller Williams. What's your phone number?
I can totally. I give out my cell phone all the time. Yes.
Go for it.
Yes. So I had to get a local phone number. So anybody that's got my old San Antonio number, it's not going to work anymore. So it's 214-549-9409. And that's a Niner. 409. Yeah. My husband told me that you got to get the Niner. He did all the aircraft stuff, so he's got all the radio communications.
Right. So give us to us one more time.
214 549-9409.
There you go. And Savannah Dunn with Keller Williams.
Yep.
What office do you work at?
I'm out of the Allen office.
Okay.
I do a lot with Collin County. So
Okay.
Collin County is kind of northeast of Dallas.
All right.
And if it's outside of my area, I network with a ton of realtors. So if it's outside my geographic area, I will connect you with someone. And I've got contacts all over the United States.
Did you hear that? Once again, the goal of the show is to be a resource and in all aspects, and we're just getting started. I'm gonna end it there. Garrett, I want to thank you, buddy, for plugging in today. We appreciate it on short notice. Savannah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this. Everyone out there listening, we know there's tens of thousands of you out there, and we know there's more. Thank you for listening. Continue to listen. We have so much more. I'm going to tell you once again, you're going to want to listen to next week's show. We've got some exciting news that we're going to share. First about the show and some things that one of our sponsors is wanting to do to help veterans as well. So tune us in every Friday at 12:30. On the JPK Crew Network and the DAV Network worldwide. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day. Savannah, thank you once again.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here.